So starting off where we left off last week, Ruth married Boaz, and they had a son, who had a son, who had a son, and his name is David. And David was the youngest of his brothers, but eventually became the king of Israel. And David was a different type of king. He was a king, he was a man who was after God's own heart. And David was super successful in his kingship because he loved God. And this is where our story begins. It was springtime, a time where kings normally go off to war, but King David decided to stay back in Jerusalem. One evening, David got up from his bed and went out on the patio. Out in the distance, he saw a woman bathing. She was gorgeous, so David sent someone to find out who she was, and they reported, "She's Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah." David sent messengers to get her, and after sleeping with her, Bathsheba went home and sent word back to David saying, "I'm pregnant." So David devised a plan to escape the situation because it was Jewish law that both parties in a scandalous relationship like this one was to be put to death. David asked his military commander to see Uriah, Bathsheba's husband, and told him to go home, hoping that he would sleep with his wife so that he could lie that the child wasn't his. But Uriah didn't go home. He slept at the entrance of the palace with all of his master's servants. David was confused, and Uriah told David, "How could I eat? How could I drink? How could I sleep with my wife when my men are encamped in open country?" David tried a second time by asking Uriah to stay one more night. So David got him drunk, but Uriah did not go home to his wife Bathsheba. So David had enough of this, and he wrote a letter to his commander asking to send Uriah back into battle. His commander put Uriah in an area where his strongest defenders were, and Uriah was killed. The commander sent a messenger to David to let him know of the news, and Bathsheba mourned. But after she was done mourning, she became David's wife and gave birth to their son. What David had done displeased God. In response, the prophet Nathan prophesied a punishment stating, "The sword shall never depart from your house." David acknowledged his sinfulness, and Nathan advised him that his sin is forgiven, and David will not die, but his child will. And after the child died, David comforted Bathsheba, and she eventually gave birth to another son, Solomon, the next king of Israel. This is a story from the Word of God.